welcome. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Eric. I am a SuiteScript coach, and I am joined today in my hosting duties by one of Salto's customer engineers, Kirk Debates. How's it going, Kirk?
Doing well, Eric. Thanks for having me along.
Good. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks for driving the ship today. Today, Kirk is going to be demonstrating the Salto platform and specifically its ability to selectively roll back or restore your NetSuite accounts to some known or desired state. So in your NetSuite account, you probably have a ton of customizations and can be pretty complex when they're spread across multiple accounts. You are working on some of them. You have work in progress on some, testing in progress on others, and it can be pretty complicated to keep those customizations in sync across all your various accounts. And sometimes things go wrong when you're trying to move and change quickly. And you might need to roll back a change that you made, or you want, say, to refresh a sandbox so that you can test out new features with current data, but you don't want to lose the work you've done on the feature. Today, we're going to look at how Salto helps you ensure that your NetSuite accounts are always set to the desired state that you want, whether that's pushing up changes or rolling back, restoring an account to a known state. All right. Before we do that, just a little bit of housekeeping. The Q&A is open, so I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the show. If you have a question for Kirk or myself, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A tab. We have scheduled an hour for this, and it is being recorded and will be distributed out via email to everyone who's here. And I think with that, Kirk, I am ready to turn things over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric.
Thank
If
you.
you can let me know when people can see my screen, I would appreciate it.
I see Salto.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining today. As Eric mentioned, I'll be demonstrating kind of our restore and revert capabilities. That's going to be my primary focus. I want to give you at least a little bit of an introduction to Salto, just so that you're familiar with what it is that I'm doing. This is the interface to Salto. We do live outside of NetSuite, which means that we do have to connect to NetSuite so that we can pull all the metadata over, so that we have the information, so that we can get you into whatever state that you want to be. And we do that by way of a fetch. These fetches, like I said, we go out and we connect to your NetSuite instance. We pull down the metadata only, so we're not bringing over any transactional data, and converting that to a format that we call NACL, so not another configuration language is what that stands for. And we put that into a dependency tree here so that you can examine everything that that is in your environment, so that you can inspect it, understand how the dependencies map out, and what have you. But one of the key important things that happens when you do a fetch is that anytime that you do a fetch, we are comparing it to the previous state of the environment, and anything that changes, we're making note of that so that we can take you back from, to any point in time that you've ever fetched with us before. So in effect, every time that we fetch from your environment, and that can be weekly, daily, or even hourly if you have a high transaction volume environment, we have the ability to restore you back to that moment in time, or at least partially or fully, depending on what your needs are. So that being said, like I said, the primary focus of today is going to be on that restore capability. So once we've got everything over here and fetched, and everything has been presented in your file cabinet, the majority of the work will be done through our compare and deploy functionality. We default to compare and deploy. So this is going to, what we do is, this is how we do our promotions or deployments, I should say, whether going from sandbox to sandbox, or prod to sandbox, or sandbox to prod. We compare the two dependency trees and present you with what's different. And then from there, you can go ahead and deploy whatever it is that you need. We build that same functionality into the ability to restore a previous version. So the most common use case that I see as a customer engineer, my customers tend to use this the most right after a sandbox refresh. So they were working on something, they thought they had everything backed up. It turns out that, hey, there was one or two things that we missed. The sandbox refresh happens over the weekend. They come back in, they can't find some of their work. So come in here and so actually, Eric, that's the most common use case that I see for Restore. You've got a far broader experience in the NetSuite community. What else do you see as far as Restore necessities?
Sure. That's a big one, definitely, especially if you want to refresh consistently when you're making lots of changes, you want to be testing on realistic data. So definitely refreshing sandbox is a really common one. But also, I use SDF a lot. And while it's a good baseline tool, it doesn't cover all your bases all the time. The validation doesn't always work completely. So things can validate correctly and then fail to deploy. So you get these deployments that fail halfway through, even though you've validated multiple times, multiple stages before that. So you're sort of left in this indeterminate state. And if you're not, using Git or something else to track the history of all your changes, it can be really hard to roll back to, one, figure out what's wrong, and two, roll back those changes. So using this where you can just easily say, whoops, like something went wrong with this deployment. Let's just roll back to the previous known good state, whether it's a production account, sandbox account, doesn't really matter. We're tracking all the history for the account here. And we can just say, I know that this state, this snapshot right here from an hour ago or whatever it might be is good. So let's roll it back to that state and then, slowly try to add back our fix and add back our broken deployment. So that's something that would have saved me a lot of time over the years, for sure.
Cool. So if anyone on the call, excuse me, has other ideas of when you might be able to use this selective restore, I definitely love to hear about it. If you can just put the information either in the chat or open in the Q&A, that would be great as well. But kind of back to the demo, like I said, we've selected so that we're going to restore to a previous version. So what we do is we present you with all of the snapshots that we've taken. You can see here that I'm doing a daily snapshot that runs at about 12:28 every morning. But on Friday, I was doing a lot of work in here. And since we're going to simulate basically a refresh that happened, we're going to go back to that one that I did right at 4 p.m. on Friday. And then it's just a matter of creating that deployment. So what we're doing here is we're rebuilding that snapshot from 4 p.m. on Friday in my case, and pulling that back into a dependency tree so that we can then do that same type of comparison where we would normally, where our default of compare and deploy compares two different environments like Sandbox 1 and Sandbox 2 here in my demo account. Instead of comparing two separate ones, we're comparing the history with the current, which is what we see here. So if we want to restore our Salto Sandbox 2 to the condition it was in at 4 p.m., we've got 23 changes that we would need to make. 4 of those are additions, meaning something got deleted, and 19 of those are modifications, meaning something got changed. We have a naming convention here at Salto for the customer engineers. So all of our stuff, so that we don't end up stepping on each other during demonstrations, we put our initials on everything. So if I want to find all of my stuff that got impacted by this, I just type in my initials. And again, you can use any type of text search here. Additionally, we have the ability, if you know that, hey, you're just looking for instance, workflows, we can just look for workflows. We have lots of filtering capabilities here built into this screen. But like I said, we're going to use my initials to find everything. And we can see here that I've got a couple of saved searches, a workflow, and a custom field that got wiped out over the weekend. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. Now, in my particular case, I don't have any dependencies on these, but had there been a dependency, that was not already in my current environment, or sorry, that was as compared to my March 15th at 4 p.m. environment, it would identify those here, not just as a required dependency, but also, if there's something that is related to this change that is not necessarily technically required by SDF to make the change, but something that may have a business reason. For instance, maybe a form would be impacted by one of these changes. It would show up here as potentially an additional dependency because it's not technically required to move over. However, it may be something that from your business case might be important. In my particular case, that's that's not necessary at this time. As you can see, I have nothing that's required or missing. So I can go ahead and preview the deployment. And this is something that we do no matter which, whether you're doing a compare and deploy, a revert, which I'll show you a little bit later, or this restore capability. We just want to make sure that we're putting things in the right orders. We're also doing an SDF validate under the covers, and just making sure that we're not missing anything. We've done a lot of deployments here at Salto. So if there's something that our customers have encountered, we're going to create what we call a change validator that is going to, go out and check and say, hey, have we seen any errors with this type of a deployment before? If so, we're going to show them to you. Couple of things here. We'll come back to that pending change request here. But as I mentioned, like I said, we just give you this basically the preview screen. It's just going to tell us that in this case, 4 things will be added. And one of those change validators has detected that I have an internal ID rather than a script ID in my saved searches. So it's just giving me a heads up that I'm going to need to, check this once I've done my deployment to make sure that it's pointing to the things that we expect. The other thing that is happening in this particular deployment, I've hooked this up to my Git repository. In my particular case, it's GitHub, but it could be, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps as well, or any Git repository, to tell you the truth, and hook this into the pull request system as well. So I'm going to, it allows me to go out there and view this on GitHub. You'll notice that because this is pending, I don't have the ability to do my deployment. So what I'm going to do is ask Eric to approve this for me. So just let me get this information to him so he can. So once Eric has approved my change request, or excuse me, my pull request. Right now. There we go. Once it registers over here on my side.
Yeah, and you can't see my screen at the moment, but I'm looking in GitHub at a normal pull request, if you're familiar with that. And that's a code review tool. I can see all the changes that he makes that are being sort of proposed here as part of this rollback. I could add comments to those. We could have a conversation about making this change. I'm going to approve it right now, and you should be good.
And there it goes. Looks good to me. So once it's been approved over here, we've got a couple of different things that could potentially happen. We have the ability to integrate with, basically put this into a full-blown CI/CD pipeline. So continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, so that it could potentially then, once everything is approved, automatically do the deployment. I've just set this up so that it is basically the pull request is a gate to prevent deployments from being deployed without somebody at least reviewing it. So once we are approved in GitHub, this status moves from pending to ready, and I now have the ability to deploy and push. So deploying is the process of actually instantiating the changes that are being made in your NetSuite account. And then pushing is, as I mentioned earlier, I've connected this with my Git repository. So all of those changes are going to be pushed over to Git so that I have an ongoing track of everything all of the changes that have been made. So
While
this will
we
just.
wait here, I'm going to step in with we have a question here from Malcolm. It says, if there are more than one developer, or really anyone, more than one person making changes, will you restore their data at the same time? And I can take a crack at that if
Go
Vince,
ahead.
you want to take it.
No, go
But
ahead.
yeah, so what this is doing is we're not pushing any changes to like developer machines or anyone's local machine. We're pushing this all up to the NetSuite account. So if your developers are working out of a Git repository or whatever it might be off their own machines, none of their code, none of their work is being touched. We're only changing what's actually in the NetSuite account. So once the restore, for instance, is done, they'll be able to pull down those changes, maybe with SDF or Salto, whatever they might be using, or manually. But we're not affecting their local in progress work in any way. We're just updating the data, the objects that are defined in the NetSuite account that we are restoring.
An
Did I
excellent way to
miss
put it.
anything? Great.
Now, the only thing that I would add to that is I wanted to kind of point out that as I was going through and I just selected all of the items that had MKD in there, there were still 19 other changes that I left behind. So it allows me to get very granular with what I'm going to bring back as far as any type of restore goes. So
yeah, and that level of specificity is really hard to replicate even with SDF. It takes a lot of manual, tedious effort to like pick and choose what you're going to deploy. You have to manually change a file, then you have to do a manual validation, and you have to hope that it catches all the dependencies, and it can't catch all the dependencies that Salto can. Um, Salto can, for instance, look into your source code in your scripts and say, and make dependency connections based on your source code. This script references that saved search. That is not something that any other of our deployment tools can do. And so having that level of specificity and having Salto sort of do the validation as you're checking the boxes and setting up these deployments and sort of staging, having it do that validation in almost real time is super helpful, especially if you are trying to fight a fire of a failed deployment. You're not always like looking for the source of the fire. You're not thinking about all the knock-on effects of which, if I roll this item back, do I need to also roll back the custom form that's associated? You're not doing that while you're making a rollback trying to get production stable again. But Salto will do it for you. You don't have to do that assessment. Salto will do that and find those knock-on effects for you. So it's really helpful.
absolutely. So, excuse me. So what we've seen here on the screen is that reversion has taken place, and all of my stuff has been restored to that previous condition. And well, in this particular case, there was no modifications. These were all adds back, so they are now back in my Sandbox 2 account over in NetSuite. Now, all of this was done with our internal mechanisms, but we also allow you the visibility to these same kinds of changes. And that's done, like I said, through a connection to a Git repository. This isn't mandatory. All of this functionality occurs without it, but for your increased visibility and for your own peace of mind, we allow you to go ahead and push things over to that Git that external Git repository. This is your repository, not ours. So it's yours to do with as you please. But again, it's something that's immutable once the change has been made over there. So auditors tend to like that. And here you can see, we're not just tracking the changes that happen inside Salto. We also, in this particular case, over the weekend, we've had 354 unpushed files. Those unpushed files just mean that they are changes that have been made outside of Salto, and we've picked up on these changes. So we can find out, set a filter on who made these changes, and we can see all the people that were in here. The generic Salto user tends to make a lot of them. And we can also find where and when that happened, if we wanted to kind of track down when those occurred. So just one more way to give you some visibility into the changes that are happening and ideas on how you might identify that those changes are going on. So
really helpful for identifying sort of out of band changes. If you have some rigorous workflow that, for deploying that needs a bunch of approvals, you can come in here and see pretty easily anything that did not go through that process.
exactly.
If everything else is flowing through Salto and going through pull requests and approvals and what have you, this right here will show you, here's all the things that did not go through that process.
Yep, definitely. So, so again, just another way to increase your visibility. Now, something else that we have the ability to do is revert changes that were made in through Salto. To do that, I'm actually going to have to make a change. So one of the things that we can do is we can go out there and actually edit the environment that I'm working in. And yeah, give it something meaningful. Let's say that we are going to fix Kirk's script. So we can do this directly in here. And all this is going to do is allow us the ability to go in and look at anything that we need to see. And let's go out, and I'm not going to look at my custom records. We're going to look at my my JavaScript file. So just come out here and edit this, and I will grab these and say, we don't need any. That's kind of trivial for this, but again, allows you to make any kind of allows you to make direct changes in your environment if you need to, and still follow this process. As far as previewing the deployment, which is what we're going through now, just making sure that this isn't going to cause any downstream effects. I don't anticipate any. And excuse me, and it's going to create another pull request for this so that we are continuing to follow that that process. And I've just sent that over to Eric so he can approve that here in the next few minutes. This, by the way, this functionality, okay, is completely controllable by you. It's not required.
And you're good.
All right, that will change to green here in the next couple of seconds. But that is that's handled by our mandatory pull request selection item. Since we're going to be doing a couple of these, I'm going to go ahead and switch that off. Like I said, Eric has already approved this, so it's gone to the ready state, and we just do that same deploy and push that we did before. This should go a little bit faster. It's only a single JavaScript file, so I don't anticipate this taking too terribly long. So this is just, like I said, this is typically used when you just need to make like one quick change, but still follow your process. And here you can see that that's already gone through and pushed everything through. But now that I have a deployment that's been done through Salto, well, once it finishes doing its thing, it will move it to the history. And so now I have the ability, I can either go to these three dots and revert it, or I can select it right here. And you can see that I have the ability to either promote or revert these changes. So promoting it is just a matter of, moving it, in this particular case, I did the editing in Sandbox 2. If I needed this to go over to my other sandbox, I could promote it to that sandbox, or I could promote it to production. Promotion is not, it's not a mandatory direction. You're not required to go from your sandbox to production. You can go in any direction. You can go from production back to sandbox. we don't care. It's just a term that we use. But in this particular case, I'm going to revert this. So again, we're going to go through that multi-step process where the first thing that we do is, analyze the change that's going to be made. We already know what's being selected. So it's already in here and goes to that preview portion. And then it's just ready for the deploy and push since I don't have anything that's going to block me. There's nothing that will not be deployed and no issues over here. So that allows us to go ahead and deploy now. I don't need this fetch running right now. And that's going to, so go ahead, Eric.
Sure. What's really helpful here is how Salto's like organizing these changes into packages. We deployed all of these things together at one time, and then we can go in and whether we're promoting or rolling back, we don't have to remember, oh, we deployed that custom record and that workflow and that script and that file. We don't have to remember any of that. Salto is packaging all of that up for us. We don't have to keep track ourselves. We can just go into these lists, check boxes, for which packages we want, which objects we do want, which we don't, and I guess send them either up to production, back down to production, or back down to sandbox, whatever it might be. So having these tracked packages is extremely useful. So you don't have to remember which files did we deploy yesterday. You don't have to keep track of that at all. Salto does it all for you.
Exactly. So we can, for instance, if we wanted to move these changes that I just made here over to my sandbox one, it's just a matter of selecting them and then promote them. We select the target and we can create that deployment. And that's going to go through those same steps again. So it looks like we have a question out there in the Q&A.
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
About to jump in.
Oh, okay. I just saw it pop up in the corner of my eye. So
no problem. Yeah, it's from Akbar. What happens in NetSuite if the field or whatever it is you are deploying already exists? Will it deploy using an SDF approach or what method? Sometimes they see that duplicate field or duplicate objects get created. So what happens in NetSuite if we're deploying something that already exists?
Okay. A couple of things should happen there. And it just depends on how you're doing that deployment. If that deployment is being done, we'll say from a comparison between your sandbox one and sandbox two, when you do that comparison, it's going to, if the file already exists and is identical, we're not even going to present it to you in the comparison. If you're doing that from one of our other mechanisms, whether you're finding an environment change to deploy, we do that same process of doing the analysis to make sure that everything that you only presented in the, we'll say in the compare and deploy screen or in any of the other screens where you have the selection capability, we're only going to present the things that are different between the environments. Now, and that's based on the fetches that we had just done, or the fetches that we had done. If there is a change that has occurred, we'll say outside of Salto that, excuse me, that we're not aware of, and we attempt to go out and look at it, at the validation point, that's where we're going to identify, oh, okay, this file has been changed, and we're going to say, oh, this needs to be reevaluated. So during that preview portion, we should see that it's not going to, you're going to get a warning that, hey, this is already out there. Do you really want to deploy it? So hopefully that made sense. I felt like I was rambling a little bit.
Oh, no. Yeah, maybe to go a step further, Salto's has its own sort of storage for all of your objects, all of your files. It has its own configuration representation of those objects. So it will actually show you the diffs, and it knows how to match based on the object type. It knows how to match, say, on the script ID or the internal ID, whatever it might be. It knows how to match those up to look for, does this exist? Is this an addition? Is this a deletion? And it will actually show you that as you go to deploy. It will tell you this is being added, this is being deleted, this is being updated. So you can see that before you even deploy, and you can see exactly what will change. So if it's a custom field, you can see that the help text is changing, or we're changing it from stored value to not stored value. You can actually see that level of detail before you even deploy.
Yeah. So this is exactly what Eric was describing. So regardless of the way that you get to the selection screen, this is what we're going to present. The changes that can be made. So there's 667 of them total. In this case, 110 of them are additions, meaning they exist in my sandbox 2, but not in my sandbox 1. 130 of them are modifications, meaning they exist in both, but there's something different. And then 427 deletions, which just means that they're in sandbox 1, but not sandbox 2. We also give you the ability to see what those differences are. So if we look at a custom record, for instance, this one, I'm looking at it in our NACL format. So for those of you who are more code oriented, this should look very familiar from like a git diff perspective. We've got an addition there and a change down here. Looks like we're changing some permissions as well. For those of you who are more comfortable with a, excuse me, with our GUI, we can see here, greens are adds and reds are subtracts. So we're changing this, from full to none, or sorry, from none to full, and from this another test role to Salto all permissions role. So those are the changes that are going to be made should I choose to select this this custom record. So that's kind of how we prevent changes from happening unexpectedly. Hopefully that makes sense. And then kind of the last thing that I really wanted to touch on was kind of going back to finding out when and how changes are being made in your environments. And that comes down to our monitoring capabilities. The easiest way to from our perspective is to go ahead and set up a notification. And we'll say that you have a bunch of consultants in your environment, and you want to make sure that you understand any changes that have been made. We'll call this one catch consultants. And we can get very granular with this. We can do it, if we care about any change, which this type of thing would kind of fall into that world. But if you just care about modifications and deletions, you can just do that. You don't care about additions, that's fine. But for the purpose of this, I'll say on any change, and then we select the elements. For my example, I'd select everything. That way, if they make changes or add anything to my 16,000 elements, I'm going to know about it the next time that we fetch. But by the same token, you can also get super granular. Like if I only care about changes to the company features, I can just monitor that. Or if there is, a particular workflow that is super sensitive, I can just keep track of that, making sure nobody's going to modify that. And you can do all kinds of combinations of this. And then we have the ability to send that to you either by email or through Slack. And we default to any changes that are made either directly or through Salto, but you can also get granular so that you can say, hey, we only care if you've made these changes outside of Salto, or we only care if you've made them by way of Salto. So allows us to, like I said, anytime we do a fetch, we are going to, and of course I picked one that doesn't work. So, oh, it's because I'm in the wrong environment. There we go. So if I look at any fetch, we can see here that 20 files were changed between 10:06 a.m. and 3:18 p.m. So this is going to compare, hey, we found these 20 changes. Am I monitoring for any of these things? If that answer is yes, then it's going to send you that email or Slack based on what you told us to before. So that really kind of encompasses everything that I wanted to show today. Was there anything else that you feel that I missed, Eric, talking about reverting, especially about reverting or restoring?
I don't think you missed anything. If anyone out there has questions for us, go ahead and share them. I do think something I've used monitoring for, and I think you can actually see this on Salto's YouTube channel, is a really common use case is that you have a script that uses a saved search, and you can't really lock down saved searches from changing. You just have to put a bunch of warning tags like "Do not change this" or "This is needed by a script" in the name of the search, which is really unwieldy. You can use this monitoring to not only monitor if specific items have changed, but also if dependencies of certain items have changed. So I can say, if any saved search that is referenced by a JavaScript file changes, let me know about it so I can go make sure that whatever change was made to the search did not break my script. So you can, talking about getting really granular with your filtering and your monitoring, you can get very, very detailed with being proactively alerted about changes in your NetSuite account. I do have a question here from Dave. How much
Okay.
volume of configuration can this tool handle at once?
That is a tough question to answer because we've not come across an environment that we couldn't handle yet. So we haven't hit that threshold. I do have customers who have hundreds of thousands of elements, um, especially when you start talking about how deep the file cabinet goes. By default, we only track the suite scripts and templates, but that's completely configurable here. And I have customers that are tracking, basically their entire web page type detail in there as well. So this can get super, I don't want to say super complex, but super deep as far as the number of elements go. And like I said, we've not hit that threshold yet. So hopefully that answers your question.
And you can see right here in this account, there's 16,000, I think you said, elements, and we're doing a live demo with that. It's not, grinding to a halt or anything like that. Another question here from maybe Yan or Jan. Where are the fetches stored? And is there a European GDPR solution or handling?
I'm going to have to defer to our security package for the GDPR portion of that question. The fetches are basically, they're stored in where we live on AWS, so it's going to function inside that. And like I said, I would have to get the details from our security package to find out, what AZs we're in and what our GDPR stuff is. Not something I store off the top of my head, so apologies for that.
All right. Anything else, Kirk, that you can think of to share? I don't see any more questions. So last chance out there.
Last chance for questions, I guess. Oh, wait, there we go.
Another one from Akbar. Thank you. One, can we have a trial account or free account for developers? You beat me to it. And then two, can this tool be a single repository for all enterprises that I work for?
Okay, I'm going to go in reverse order.
Sure.
Yes, it can be
repeat
a
them too.
single repository for all enterprises that you work for. I'm going to attack this in a couple of directions. If all of your information if everyone from your organization is attacking the same number of things, you can store them as different environments in here. If, for instance, you are, we'll say that you're a consultant and your customers want to invite you to their installations, then you get this ability. My organization is called Kirk's organization, but you have the ability to select different organizations through that so that you have, so that you can see their organization, so that your view of it is entirely from your perspective, and you can select from them. And it's either, through multiple environments in your own account, or through your customers' environments, and you just select those that way.
Yeah,
As
I can add a little bit to that too, how
oh,
I use
perfect.
it. I am also a consultant, if you will, or contractor. I work with multiple clients. I have my own NetSuite accounts. I collaborate with Salto and I work in their accounts. And yeah, just like Kirk said, I have my Salto organization and it has my accounts in it. It has my clients' accounts in it. And I can use Salto for all those. And then when we're going to collaborate on maybe a Salto demo or something like that, one of the Kirk invites me to his organization and I can just use the drop down, switch to his environment and or his organization and see all of his connected environments as well. So this single tool can manage, any NetSuite account that is connected to Salto. You can see it in your account that you have access to, privileges, of course.
Of course. The second question there was about trial account or free account for a developer. And that's actually kind of two different questions. See, that we do have a forever free version that only encapsulates the explore functionality, which we didn't really touch on today, but that's where you have the ability to go in and we'll take a look at one of my workflows and presents, our representation of the workflow, and as well as the dependency. So you can track down, okay, this workflow depends on this save search, and this save search depends on a couple of different custom fields, and allows you to kind of drill up and down that. So that type of free account is available for one environment and is limited to the explore functionality. A trial account is definitely available, and it's actually one of the things that I believe Eric has the URL. But you can go to salto.io and sign it, and there'll be a either I think it's a create account or create free account or something along those lines, or try a demo, and it'll pop up there as far as that trial goes. And those typically last for 30 days. So
there are links being posted in the chat right now if you want to check out either a personalized demo or a free trial account, or both. Both is very powerful. That's what it took for me to sort of wrap my head around it and how I might use Salto. Having both a demo and just being able to play around and tinker with it myself, that's what really sort of connected all the dots for me, for sure. Last question from Ian. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but can you talk about prices?
not usually my purview, but our pricing is open. So if you go to salto.io and add pricing, it'll tell you how our pricing works. And since this is for NetSuite, you just go to NetSuite and it gives you a little form so you can fill that out, and it explains the entire billing mechanism there. So definitely feel free to go there. Like I said, salto.io/pricing. So if somebody can put that in the chat, I'm sure that would be useful as well.
All right. I think that sounds like we can wrap it up here. I think we did all the calls to action I was going to give. You
Awesome.
want a free demo or a
There we
free
go.
trial account? Salto.io. Links are in the chat. And thank you, Kirk, for driving the show here. Really appreciate that. And thanks to everybody who joined us live.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.